Hello and welcome to another episode of the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast. I had a really funny opening planned, and then Nathan ruined it by reading what we were doing the episode about. So, I am Samuel, your beloved host, and to my right, a slightly aggrieved Nathan. How are you, buddy?
Slightly aggrieved. So it was supposed to be one of our surprise episodes for me. I decided to have a little sneak peek, and normally I can still sort of pretend. Maybe I could be like, "Oh, what's going on?" But I will not pretend here, sir. I will not pretend. You have made a powerful enemy today.
That's fair. That's fair. So, before we get into the episode, we are trying something out here. So, for those of you who are on our Patreon, are aware that we have a rank called Curated Club. And Curated Club members, basically, they're all allowed to sort of say to us, hey, I want you to do an email on this. I want you to do an episode on this. And whatever it is, doesn't matter how heretical or fish-related or Imperial Fisty that the request is, we're going to do an episode on it.
Boo.
Boo. Thank you, Nathan. And that's what this episode is going to be about. It's a request from one of our Curated Club members. But before we do get into that, Nathan, we actually have something very serious to talk about.
Is it a correction?
It is kind of a correction.
No. I have had people contact me, right? People have messaged me. People have emailed me directly, messaged me directly away from the podcast to talk about this.
So
you're a fool and you've made enemies.
Listeners, a lot of what you hear on this show is based around these personas that Nathan and I have developed for the show. In a lot of ways, we are the characters we sort of portray here, but in certain ways, obviously, we dial certain elements of our personalities up to 11 for this. And I like to think that we are generally pretty well received. We don't have any sort of negativity coming towards us. Until last episode, I made fun of Nathan by saying that he had the most sort of negatively viewed statement with his description of dog legs. And
yes,
then I apparently made the mistake of offending a planet's worth of dog owners. So I genuinely believe it is time for an apology. So
yes,
after my comments, I would like to apologise to all of the dog owners out there. I would like to apologise for the feelings you have for your pets with jobs. You are slave owners. You are demons in human form. Cats are better, and you snivelling canine fanatics can suck it. All right? That's my official statement. That is the official stance of this podcast. Dogs suck. Cats rule. Keep emailing me. See if I care.
On a different note, please do email me directly. I will get a chance to talk to Sam after this, and I am going to thoroughly earbash him on...
Seriously, the number of people...
No, you've had your moment to be silly.
Okay.
And I will thoroughly earbash him on the benefits of dog ownership. Cats are an acceptable,
source of protein.
Side. Yeah, well, that too. Yes. I'm not going to say I've eaten one. I probably have, actually, in my time, some of the food I've eaten. But... yeah, you're a fool, and you are bringing anger towards the podcast.
No, I'm not bringing anger towards the podcast. I'm teaching people. I come on this show every single week to teach you all, to pass knowledge. And you all come back at me with like, can you play fetch with a cat? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Can you take your cat for walks? Yes, you can. I've taken my cats for walks many times.
Have they walked with you?
Yeah, put them on little leashes and stuff.
No, you don't.
I'm not even kidding. I have cat leashes.
No. Oh my god. Firstly, I don't believe you, and secondly, that seems sort of cruel. I only ever saw one cat on a leash, and it lost its freaking mind.
No.
It went bonkers.
I have no problem
Right.
with dogs. I have a problem with dog owners. All right? You don't own a cat. The cat allows you to be in its presence. It allows you to care for it. All right?
You have a
Your
problem
pets
with
with
dog
jobs,
owners?
you can take them and shove them. All right. So, Nathan, now that we've gone through the correction there, that I had to correct our audience, why don't you jump on to our new Patreons?
I will say that we have had an avalanche of emails and messages regarding the dog ownership. So I say continue the avalanche. Attack this
Continue.
man.
Whatever you want.
You're an
Nerds.
idiot. No. I'm already upset at the episode that we're doing, and now I'm upset at you. This is... Be prepared for multiple derail, folks. Multiple derails. Right. Okay. Getting into our new patrons. We only have 2 this week, actually. We need some more motivation for the old butt tattoo, guys.
Yeah, butt tattoo.
We're close. I think we are now sitting at 35 away from it, or something
Yes,
like
35
that.
away. I think it's 35 away from butt tattoo. You know what'll really show me dog owners? Join our Patreon. Put your money where your supposed love of canines is, and put it towards me getting a butt tattoo.
Yes, let's do that. But the first one out of our 2 is Gooka Minis.
Yeah.
Gooka? Yeah?
Gurkha? It's like a gurkha. But,
Oh, right. It's like one of those tiny little
like a dill pickle.
pickled. Yeah, like a dill pickle. One of those tiny little pickles, yeah. Nice. And Yardi, somebody who works exclusively outside.
Yeah.
So thank you both very much for your additions to our Patreon. Please, if you want to see more of our content, if you want to hear more of our content, jump onto Patreon. We have quite an abundance of additional listening goodness.
Yes. So if you do enjoy the show, you are interested in supporting the podcast, and especially if you're one of my fellow beloved cat lovers, please shoot over to patreon.com/the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast. We are 100% funded by the goodwill of our audience, though we do this for the love of our hobby and freedom for all canines from their supposed owners. Each month we have a Patreon exclusive episode, as well as competitions, polls on episodes, and other bonus content. If you're looking for another way to support us, get onto our social media, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. A like, comment, and subscribe helps us to grow and gets our particular brand of lore out into the world. All of our links are in the show notes, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. So our episode today comes from a Caryatid Club member by the name of Dan. And Dan has asked quite specifically in regards to an argument you and I were having on a previous episode.
Yes.
Where we got a little bit heated over the ability for the ecclesiarchy to have military servants. And Dan was sort of like, you guys were talking about this group, and I sort of want to get your perspective on them and what they could be. And
Traitors one and all, that's what they are.
it is what a lot. Nathan, typically it's you starting the episode out with the quotes or the write-ups and the like for when we do these sorts of things. I think I'm going to read one for you this time.
I just, as a quick little note to this episode, I think you're going to get really up my nose in this episode, and I intend to be annoyed with you.
That's fine. That's fine.
Cool.
Sometimes you need to be.
Yeah, cool. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
So the quote is as follows. You may not be clad in the blessed flak armour of the Imperial Guard. You may not bring the Emperor's wrath through the barrel of a righteous lasgun. What you lack in the Imperium's most blessed weapons of war, you replace with fervor and faith. No army forged can stand before the might of the Emperor's judgment, wrought by our hands. And that was Abbot von Stiel at the Veneris Quarry Uprising. Scummers, we are talking about one of the greatest forces of the 40k universe, the Frateris Militia. Now, that particular quote was from the Dark Heresy RPG book, The Blood of Martyrs. Dark Heresy RPG was just such a sick source of just different, backgrounds and just additional lore. It was the Calixus sector.
The Calixus sector? I don't know. The small bits that I did read from the Dark Heresy, it was like they had been sort of given free rein to just write about 40k. Get into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just expand it and take it to the next level. And it's one of those things that I was not fortunate enough to have a gaming group around to be able to play any Dark Heresy. But that's beside the point. No army forged can stand before the might of the Emperor's judgment. I totally agree with that, absolutely. Wrought by our hands.
I'm confused by the confusion there. This seems right up your alley. Religious crazies, armies of them. They talked about lasguns and flak armor. Already, I think I'm starting to turn you. I think you're starting to become pro Frateris Militia.
No, most certainly not. Right. Just so we're clear on, and do you know what? I'm happy for my notion to change. When we do these episodes, when we do anything that's related to podcast, I leave my mind as, not a sealed vault, or have the walls up. I like to think, yes, show me what you got. Come at me with a brand new idea or a different concept, and I will happily take it on board if it is worth its while. So far, I can see only that Abbot von Schnitzel, whilst leading a quarry uprising against who?
I'm guessing against a force who had waged their war against the Emperor. But so you're saying you come into these episodes with an open mind?
I do. I believe I do.
Well, I want to throw another quote at you there. An open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded. All right? Already you're starting to fall, Nath. Why don't you jump into that first read then?
Oh, my Lord. Righto. The Frateris Militia, traitors one and all, are the masses of imperial cults, most zealous faithful, who have gathered to fight the wars of faith against the enemies of the God Emperor and mankind. They constitute the unofficial and generally ill-trained troops of the Adeptus Militarum, who fight in the interests of the ecclesiarchy. Although most such mobs consist of no more than faithful imperial citizens drawn from a broad walk of life, some brothers have had military experience in the Astra Militarum or Planetary Defence Force. They make up for this general lack of military training with selfless fanaticism. That I abide by. Tick, tick, tick. Yes, believe in the Emperor. Preach, brother, preach. But there are rules. There are rules in place. Those people, those masses, those mobs that want to go and fight in the Emperor's name, in defense of the realm of mankind, in the oppression of chaos cults, in the oppression of mutants, go for your life. Grab whatever you have, whether it be a lump of wood, a lasgun, a heavy bolter, whatever you can lug around to quell the mutant, the Xenos, the heretic. Go for your life. I totally agree with it. It is the next level above them that decides to stick their dirty little paws in, where I do not appreciate or do not abide their behaviour.
So you're saying that the citizenry of the Imperium have no place in defending against either the enemies from within, without, or beyond?
That is not at all what I said. I said they can gather together, they can mass together, they can do whatever they want to defend the Imperium and mankind. But it is the ecclesiarchy sticking their dirty paws into this gathered mass where my issue will rise. These people of the Frateris Militia, the masses of imperial cults, the zealous faithful, those who have decided to take their training and teach their brothers around them, those ones, if they are behaving like vigilantes, go for your life. As soon as you begin to put the interests of the ecclesiarchy in place, that is when you have the issue. That is when I see the problem. I don't mind roving bands hunting down chaos cults, even if you wipe out a cult that may not necessarily be completely chaos aligned, but they were close enough. That's okay. Go for your life. But if it is led with the interests of the ecclesiarchy in mind, no, I don't agree with that, because they will eventually turn that to their own machinations. Very much like the Veneris Quarry uprising. It wasn't against any chaos cult. It was against an imperial governor who wasn't abiding by what the members of Abbot von Schnitzel's party wanted. So he's used this religious fervour in the most heinous of ways. And that is one of the reasons why the emperor wanted a secular society. That's a bigger theme. We're not going to get necessarily into that. But I have zero problems with fanaticism. Go for your life. I love my religious nutters. You know that. We all know that. But I have a massive issue when that religious nuttery is weaponized by the ecclesiarchy, by an organization that has been known to just pursue its own agenda.
So you actually looked up the Veneris Quarry uprising?
I have a belief about it. Yes.
Okay, so this actually does come from the Dark Heresy RPGs, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up.
I may have stretched the truth on my knowledge of the uprising.
The Veneris Quarry uprising was actually when Confessor. So it was basically the individuals mining the stone from the quarry believed that their toil was too great for the works they were receiving, and they stopped sending the stone to the ecclesiarchy and sent a list of demands. Confessor von Stiel rallied a force of unknowable size from the pilgrims who came to Veneris to weep. He whipped the Frateris Militia into a frenzy with sermons on the heresy of sloth and fueled the hatred for those who would allow the monuments to die rather than perform their sacred duty. So instead of performing their duty of mining the stone and sending it to the ecclesiarchy to create the statues for the temples and shrines, they chose not to because they were putting their own demands above that of the Imperium. Now, over the course of 3 bloody days, the Frateris militia killed nearly half of the workers. In one instance, the militia toppled a 2-kilometre high macro statue of St. Barabbas onto the assembled rioters. And at the end of this, Confessor von Stiel accepted the confession of the leaders, and they were put to death in front of an ocean of praying pilgrims. So the Frateris militia, the common everyman of the Imperium, who have nothing but their ability to work and their faith in the God Emperor, have come together to fight against a group who are quite openly defying not only imperial law, but the law of the Emperor himself. Because we know that the law of the Imperium's laws and rules and sort of mandates come directly from either the Emperor or his chosen people in control. Now, what you're saying there is nothing but heresy. It's completely wrong, and that's fine. I understand that you believe it should be politicians in charge, or should it be the God Emperor of mankind? Nathan?
It should be the Astra Militarum in charge, and with a direct line to the Emperor. I think the galaxy would be better off for it, a la Solar Macarius.
Okay.
But
So,
let me talk about the Veneris Quarry Uprising from a real world perspective, which is not something I always go to, but it's really just union busting. So
and
it's
as a podcast, we are pro-union busting.
no,
We've always
no,
said
we're
that.
not. No, we're not. No, we're not. We love dogs, and we are comfortable.
We've
with
always
unions.
been anti-union. We've always said that.
Why? Why are you going to do this? Have you got some agenda that I don't know about? Are you going to become some sort of Frateris Militia? Is that your plan?
Praise the God Emperor and pass the ammunition.
Yep. No, you've made accusations against me, right? So I get to counter them.
Okay.
So the ecclesiarchy have found that the workers weren't doing what they want them to do, so they have whipped up the Frateris Militia into a frenzy to go wipe them
The
out.
ecclesiarchy has not. An individual confessor has. He's effectively rallied his own flock and the pilgrims coming to this planet.
Who does that individual confessor abide by? Who does he work for use of a better term?
Okay, so before I answer that question, so you're saying that a planetary governor who decides to, or a Space Marine commander, for example, who chooses to rally his forces behind his own beliefs is completely justified in their actions as long as they're
No.
saying it's for the benefit of the Imperium?
No, that there's nothing to do with what I was saying.
I wonder what Gulliman would say about that.
No, you see, you're just making stuff up, and then you're going, oh, well, this is what you're saying, right? What I'm saying is this confessor has decided that we want the mining operations to continue.
For the good of the Imperium, yes.
No. For their mindset is we want the mining operations to continue because we need to build our statues, right? And from a religious nutter point of view, yes, okay, fair enough, that makes sense. But how easy is it to turn that against the local PDF commander who has said, we are sanctioning off this area, you can't come into this area? Oh, well, I'll just go grab my Frateris Militia. I'll rile them all up and turn them against you. So those miners shouldn't have been wiped out the way that they were.
Those miners shouldn't have gone on strike. If their job was to mine the stone for the statues for the ecclesiarchy, they have decided that their works are less important than their own personal enrichment. What, they weren't getting paid enough?
Well, they probably weren't getting fed enough, plain and simple, right? So
We've gone drastically.
No. No. Wait a second. No. You're going to talk about belief systems. We'll get to the rest of the reads. I don't care. We'll get to them. But okay, this one's a bit of a grey area. Yes, they should be doing the right thing by building the statues and making sure that the voice of the Emperor is heard and so forth. But at the same time, how easily that mob was manipulated by the confessor is what the danger of a Frateris militia led by the ecclesiarchy is. Next read.
Okay. So since the ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor's great reformation of the Imperial Church, following the dark days of the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium, the Adeptus Ministorum has been prevented by the dictates of the Decree Passive from maintaining forces that consist of men at arms. Although this decree put an end to the vast standing armies of the ancient ecclesiarchies Frateris Templar, the archaic wording of the decree has been subject to many abuses over the centuries, and only a fool would assume that the ecclesiarchy lacks military power. So there are three big talking points from this one here. The first being the Frateris Templar. Now, the Frateris Templar were actually a paramilitary force of the Adeptus Ministorum for several centuries until it was disbanded in the 36th millennium, following the reign of blood of High Lord and just straight up hero of this podcast, Goj Van Dyer, during the Age of Apostasy. Now, it was subsequently replaced as the Ecclesiarchy's military by the Orders Militant of the Adeptus Sororitas. So, way back when the sort of, this is obviously post-heresy, the Frateris Templar were founded when the Ecclesiarchy basically left Terra. They were like, no, there's too many accountants and nerds here. We want to go somewhere we can basically form our own little empire with blackjack and hookers, basically.
And religion.
So they went to a planet called Ophelia 7 and basically declared that their new capital. And as groups in the 40k universe have a tendency to do, they immediately started taxing everyone. And people were like, I'm not going to pay you taxes. I pay taxes to the Adeptus Terra and the Imperium, the Imperial Governor. Like, I pay more taxes than I actually make, you know?
Yeah, much like our miners. Yes.
Much like our miners from earlier. And so what the Ecclesiarchy decided was to do what sort of all great organisations have done in the past, and have organised a group of street toughs to effectively collect their money for them. These street toughs just also happened to have their own starships and crews and landing vehicles and tanks and armoured personnel carriers and all those sorts of things. They were literally cruising around in like regiment-sized fleets, basically just besieging people who wouldn't pay their taxes. And it's like, but I've already paid my taxes. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no.
You get to pay double taxes.
Yeah, they were putting their heel down on their throats and saying, we need more money. What do you need more money for? Well, we have this book here. It's called the Book of Augur, with the first letter's missing. But
Augurs. It's they're used for drilling.
yeah, exactly. Obviously the Book of Augur. But they're saying, we need money for statues. We need money for places of worship. We need money to fuel
for our good works.
The religious, for our good works. Yes, perfect. But we also need
cardinals can't travel planet to planet on regular passenger vehicles. They need private starships.
Yes,
right?
We need armed.
We need mega temples with laser light shows.
Exactly. And so they're saying, we need you to fund our military as well.
Yes.
So, and you can understand why those of the Imperium would just go, hang on a second, you're starting to build a force. And at this stage as well, there would still be voices that would understand the importance of the secular Imperium as well.
But you got to remember, this is the 36th millennium. It's only, what, 6,000 or 7,000 years since the heresy occurred?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. There'd still be voices, few, I will admit, who would be talking about a secular imperium. We know even in the 41st millennium, there is still enough around that there is the talk of what the imperium, and even Guilliman, even the Lion, even it was the first company captain of the Dark Angels who said it as well. They understand that this is not what the Emperor was looking for, right? Now, or wanting to build more so. So when you have this force that is going out there and taxing and doing all of that, and then they're using it for the wrong means. They're not even expanding the empire. They're not even expanding the galaxy. It's vile. It goes against everything that we need to understand about the Imperium. Kill every Xenos you see. Go for your life. Kill every heretic you see. But wiping out your own, killing your own for, like, it's basically financial gain. That irks me all the wrong way.
But we need the money for our private transports, and we can't have second-rate weaponry. What you reckon these three cardinals on their pilgrimage back to Holy Terror, you think they can't have a gold-plated vessel? That's
Gold-plated
heresy,
vessel.
mate. That's heresy.
So petition the Imperial Navy, talk to the Astartes, do something. Do not
Well,
raise your own army. But we are getting distracted
we know
from the
enough
point.
sailors to know that they are ungodly types at the best of times, and the Imperial Navy would be no different. But obviously, so that's who the Frateris Templar are. They're
Yes, yeah.
effectively a private army run
Yep.
by the ecclesiarchy, in the, to the point of they were better equipped than your regular Imperial Guard regiment, because obviously
Yeah.
the Imperial Army has become the Imperial Guard after this point. That's Militarum. They were equipped typically with carapace armor and gold-plated las guns, and also they had power bayonets, which frankly is amazing.
So see, now you're starting to talk my language. Like, I can abide by that. Actually, there was something that I watched recently. I'm trying to think of the show, but I can't quite remember. I think it's American X or something like that. It's about the expansion into the Western America, and there was a militia force that they were called something like the Naho Legion or something like that, and they were Mormons who came together.
Is it the Nauvoo Legion?
Nauvoo, yeah, the Nauvoo Legion.
Yeah, wait.
And
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about this.
yeah, we
It
have.
was the Mormons after the death of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
they basically created their own army. Do you know what I mean? So they just went, no. We get no protection because we're treated so poorly by our own kind. We need protection from the locals, protection from the natives, blah blah blah. The military doesn't help us. The sheriffs or whatever they have at the time aren't helping us. So we're going to create our own military, and they go off and undertake in some incredible atrocities, right? And they manipulate situations, and they're obviously there to protect their own kind because they were getting no protection from anywhere else. You can understand that, but the autonomy which they had, coupled with absolute blind faith belief, turned them into something I think that was operating not with the good nature of their church in mind. And that's the way I see the ecclesiarchy as well. And this is the I'm not talking about just the Frateris Templar here. I'm talking about the modern ecclesiarchy as well. So if they have the power, they use it in the most absurd and corrupt manner. Anyhow, we are talking about their prehistory.
Yes.
So continue.
So yeah, they were rich, they were powerful, and they were incredibly well equipped. Obviously, at the end of the heresy, when the Imperial Army was broken down into its component sort of sections, it was split between the what became the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, and the Imperial Navy. So no longer would a single commander have the ability to effectively transport their army to a different planet or a different system and lay siege upon it in that fashion. By breaking it down the way they did, it rendered that impossible to all but the most powerful of individuals.
Yeah.
The ecclesiarchy bypassed this. They became incredibly rich and were able to have their own ships and have their own armies. So already they were defying the basis of what this new imperial war machine was built on. A separation of the different aspects of the tools of war.
And that's the crux of what I'm talking about. If you need a warship, go to the Imperial Navy. If you need a tank, go ask the Astra Militarum. Go do these things through the right channels. It might take 1,000 years for you to receive this, but you are not supposed to have your army because your blind faith, which is also the viewpoint of so many billions of souls, of it is all excusable because I'm doing it in the name of the emperor, suddenly becomes a weapon in itself. Do you know what I mean? And so what you're talking about there, I'm talking about the modern iteration of the ecclesiarchy here. What you're talking about then is the ability to motivate so many people. And like you can, it might be a group of 10, it might be a group of 10 million. And we see that in the Aranthian succession as well. You know, they're almost like the entire planet is motivated by the prophet. So by having that tool, that ability to almost like flick a switch and get a mob going, imagine if they had such easy access to starships. And they could potentially, if there are believers within the Imperial Navy, high-ranking commanders, they would do that. They would just be like, absolutely, come and board our ships. And it's the naysayers, the voices who go, no, we shouldn't be doing this, that become important. And again, this is the modern iteration, but continue.
Yeah. So obviously we've sort of said who the Frateris Templar were. Then Sebastian Thor, who eventually became the Ecclesiarch, overthrowing the rightful Ecclesiarch, Goj Vandaya. I would love to do an episode on Goj Vandaya and the Age of Apostasy and this sort of stuff, but oh man, that is like a 12-hour episode.
Absolutely, it is. It is
just
a
screaming.
full-blown.
Just
it would be. It would be me going, yes, I agree with that, and no, I don't agree with that. But it's the same point. I know I'm religiously confused. Yes,
just openly treasonous. But then, yes, so the decree passive effectively broke down the military ability of the ecclesiarchy. Now, this what's the word I'm looking for? This effectively stated that they could it forbade them to gather, train, promote, sustain, or in any way command any force of men under arms. All right. So those vessels went back to the Imperial Navy, or they went to sector fleets, or they were sold to rogue traders, or whatever it was. And those armed forces, those men and women under arms, those who could be were then sent to the Advata Sororitas, the brides of the Emperor, I believe they were at the time.
Yeah.
And those men either went into the what's the word I'm looking for? Went into the Imperial Guard, or were simply told to disband. The decree passive stated that they could no longer do it. The decree passive itself was in the name of his infinite wisdom and by his immortal authority. We, the High Lords of Terror, do hereby decree the ecclesiarchy forbidden to gather, train, promote, sustain, or in any way command any force of men under arms. Now, that's obviously completely ignored by the fact that the ecclesiarchy basically control the Sisters of Battle. And
yeah, but that's the old, like, Lord of the Rings, no man can kill me. And she whips off the helmet and goes, ha, I got you. I'm a lady. Stab. Right? It's when she kills the Witch King. It is the same sort of like...
was that in the Deathly Hollows?
I know, you know.
During the...
I know.
During the siege of Hogwarts.
Right, so anybody who is writing to us about the dogs thing, please attack him on his attack of Lord of the Rings. Obviously not. And I'm not going to explain it to you because I'm not sticking my foot into that trap. So, but it's the semantics of it.
Yes,
you know, the Imperium the Imperium have thought themselves very clever, got a million servitors typing up this decree passive and said, no man at arms. Well, that makes sense. Men, women, we sort of, you know, it's the vibe of the thing, right? And the ecclesiarchy have just gone, gotcha. I know a bunch of ladies, they're angry, they're religious, and we're going to start giving them bolt guns. Yep. This is going to be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so it is semantics of it, and that obviously leads to where we are now with the as you say, the ecclesiarchy basically controlling the Sisters of Battle. I don't know enough about the Sisters of Battle, but I would love to. Whether or not they view themselves as that as well, under the I guess yoke or of the ecclesiarchy, or if they see themselves as, I don't know, a semi-independent fighting force.
I think they would see themselves as an independent force, but simply they would see themselves as loyal to the emperor, and through the emperor they serve the ecclesiarchy.
Yeah. I guess if you've got Frateris Militia around you, you've got ecclesiarchal representatives around you as well. You've got preachers, confessors, and all the right, and they're all saying the same things that you believe in. You'd be like, well, why wouldn't I fight with you? Do you know what I mean? And they find a group of Astra Militarum who aren't running into the enemy's guns, and they start, the ecclesiarchal members start killing them because they're like, well, you're being cowards, you're being heretics by not charging forward to take these shots that could potentially kill a more prestigious member of the Imperium. And the Sisters of Battle would sit there and go, that makes sense to me. Let's kill them as well, because they are not doing their duty in accordance with our belief system.
Well, one of the reasons I think the Sisters of Battle would see themselves as completely separate from the ecclesiarchy is because they can have a representative of the Adeptus Sororitas on the High Lords of Terror. The Abbess Sanctorum is a possible member of the High Lords of Terror.
Oh, righto. So yeah, they're almost in a position of higher power than the ecclesiarchy.
Well, no, because the ecclesiarchy has a permanent position on the High Lords of Terror. So
okay.
derailing us from our original idea.
Yeah.
The High Lords of Terror, there's 12 seats, and of those, the following 9 officers are almost always represented: the Master of the Adeptus Administratum, the Representative of the Inquisition, the Ecclesiarch of the Ministorum, the Fabricator General of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Grand Provost Marshal of the Adeptus Arbos, the Paternoval Envoy of the Navigators, the Master of the Astronomicon, the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum, and the Master of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. All right, so that is 9. And then the other 3 seats are made up of 3 of the following: the Lord Commander of the Segmentum Solar, the Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum, the Lord High Admiral of the Imperial Navy, the Cardinals of the Holy Synod of Terra, the Abbess Sanctorum of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, the Chancellor of the Estate Imperium, the Speaker for the Chartist Captains, who is the representative of the Imperial Merchant Fleets and the Chartist Captains, and the Lord Constable of the Synopticon.
Right. Let me just point out one glaring omission there. This is how you start a heresy. Where is the Space Marine representation there? You read a lot of stuff. Did you say Adeptus Astartes?
It doesn't matter, because the new leader of the entire Imperium, after the Emperor, of course, is Guilliman.
No, so okay, forget that. But that's
it's actually because of Guilliman. It is actually because of Guilliman. In his work, the Codex Astartes, he points out that it is the Space Marine's duty to serve mankind, not to rule it, which is why they don't have a position on the High Lords.
Again, fine. Abide by your Codex. I'm not a massive believer in the Codex anyway, because it is just the viewpoint of a Space Marine. It's not the viewpoint of the Emperor. But that is how you start a heresy. That is the whole premise of the Tyrant of Badab. We are tools. I see your eyes light up. I see Luft Huron mentioned, and you're just like, oh baby, let's talk. But the whole premise is that we are not servants to your Imperium. We are not fodder on your battlefield. We are not something that is forgotten about on some distant world to fight some war without resupply or without support, without anything, simply because somebody had said that world had been exterminated. So this is how you start a rebellion with Space Marines.
But since Guilliman has come back and taken over the Imperium, the High Lords of Terror are now advisors to him. But we are not talking about the High Lords of Terror.
Okay.
That might be another
move
episode,
on.
given the sort of energy so far. Why don't you jump on to the next read?
Right, yes, we do have many reads, actually. We're just getting, drawn in. This feels like a soapbox episode where I could just stand here and be like, and this is my next point, and this is my next point. And you know what? I'm contradicting myself, but I don't care, just as long as we wipe them out with combat engineers. Right. In times of great need, such as the wars of faith or during imperial crusades, the ecclesiarchy arms its male servants, both from the clergy and mass of lay followers. A great mass of clerks, deacons, pardoners, and other minor functionaries swarm from the great temples and cathedrals, armed with whatever weapons they can lay their hands upon. To some, they are nothing but a disorganised rabble, a greater threat to themselves than any opposing force. But on many occasions, the Frateris Militia have been known to perform tremendous acts of courage and valour in the name of the Emperor. So, when we talk about them in this regard, this I think is fine. Now, just let me clarify my statement. I'm not even looking at you, but let me clarify my statement before you jump down my throat and judge me here. This is getting the cooks, the cleaners, the janitors, anybody who is available, and putting a weapon in their hand and saying, let's go for it. So this is the most novice priest to the most senior deacon, and you're saying, here, do you have digilasers? Yes, you're going to war. Oh, they're weapons that go on your fingers, by the way. Do you have pistols? Do you have bad language? Do you have a sharp stick? Whatever. We are being mobilised. Mm-hmm. This, I think, is fine, because this is not a standing army. This is, let's get it all together. Let's get it all together. Let's take our people and push them. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that the ecclesiarchal forces wouldn't have them trained either. They would have, everybody needs to know how to shoot a little bit. Everybody needs to know how to defend themselves. So we just, a little bit of training. Oh, look, we suddenly have a military. But that military is in the guise of, well, that's all my preachers, and that's all my deacons, and that's all my novitiates, and that's all these. And I can hide them with all these titles and ranks. But push come to shove, I can flick a switch, and suddenly I have now a somewhat reasonable military on my hands.
Okay. So the Oxford Dictionary defines a militia as a military force that is raised from the civil population to supplement a regular army in an emergency. And what you've said there is 100%, I agree with totally. They are arming the male servants from the clergy, the cooks, the cleaners, the dog walkers, all non-military personnel. They are saying to them, get what you can. You know, they're armed with whatever weapons they can lay their hands on. And this may also be parts, those individual members of their flocks, where they're saying, Nathan, you have a physical job, and at your job you have a huge hammer. Go and get that hammer and bring it with you. You are going to use it to smite the enemies of mankind.
Let me interject there. I know you let me talk before. I'd say that's the bit I don't agree with. Continue.
What don't you agree with?
Mobilising the flock.
Okay.
No, I don't agree with that. They shouldn't have
So you're saying
the
they should
power.
only arm the members of the clergy and their servants, not the
Yes,
flock?
not the flock.
Okay.
Because when you mobilise a flock, you're talking about an uncountable number, and that is where the danger is.
So
That's
you're
what I don't agree
yeah.
with.
So you're saying convincing civilian populations to rise up under arms against the enemies of mankind is wrong.
Against the enemies of mankind is not wrong at all, but I don't believe it would just be against the enemies of mankind.
But what about during wars of faith or imperial crusades? Do you think Lord Solomon Macarius didn't have civilian militias
He
possibly
would, he
travelling
would
with
have
him on the flotillas?
millions of fanatics and nutters, and that's fine. He is a Lord Solar. He is not a member of the ecclesiarchy, so
But you
he
don't
is
think
okay.
those individuals were being driven by faith?
They can be driven by faith, by all means, but they are not ecclesiarchy. They are not being directed by the faith, because I do not believe the ecclesiarchy has the the goodness of the Imperium at their very core. They would rather burn in the ashes of the Imperium, fixated on their belief, rather than, if they were to have a military, rather than use that military to, to basically give that to a better military commander. You know what I mean? So if a Space Marine commander comes along and you've got 100,000 Frateris Militia here, they are going out onto my left flank. No, they're not. They're going to protect our sanctum here, and we're going to use them for that and only that. Yes, but we need them on the left there. They need to be
So
catching
you're,
bullets with their faces.
yeah, so your issue isn't with the concept of the militias being raised, but it's being raised from the civilian populations and then being led by, let's just call them, by religious leaders.
Yes, effectively that's my problem. It's the religious leaders leading these forces
Okay.
that
So,
annoy
in
me.
your opinion, Sebastian Thor, who was later declared an imperial saint and the greatest ecclesiarch ever, who raised militias from the civilian populations to overthrow the rightful ecclesiarch Goj Vandaya, and then formed they've then pushed through these reforms, including the decree passive, and then created the Adeptus Sororitas. You're saying he was a traitor to the Imperium and shouldn't have been allowed to do what he did.
That is a very particular and unique situation.
But you're
That is
saying that him, a religious leader, should not have been in control of militias
This
and
is
led
before
this
the
crusade.
This is before the decree passive. As soon as it become, if they were to legalize the ecclesiarchy having armies, go for your life. If the decree passive vanishes overnight, go for your life. Have as many forces as you want. But right now, the rules dictate, if you want a navy, if you want an army, you need to go hat in hand and speak to the Astra Militarum, to the Imperialis Navis. You need to go to these forces and ask. You can't do your own thing. And you can't do your own thing because we don't trust you, because you have form in proving that you are self-serving. Now, if you didn't have that scenario where they were self-serving and made themselves probably as powerful as an Imperial Navy fleet, then you wouldn't be in the scenario that you're in. You would have forces that could be... Look, this is about a bit of an anomaly to this, but going off the read that we're talking about, they should not be mobilising their flock. They should just be mobilising their own forces and arming them as best they can. And you could still be talking about thousands, potentially tens of thousands of clergy, all come together, all equipped quite nicely. Like, do you know the new squad that came out for Kill Team, the Sanctifiers?
Oh,
Huh?
glorious! But you're
Glorious.
saying they shouldn't exist because they're a religious militia.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Actually, I'm looking at the Kill Team right now, and without knowing their individual titles, I will say that there's probably only one or two members of that kill team that would not have a an already
No,
preordained
I
title
apologise.
or
I apologise. I actually think you're right there. I think that entire kill team is made up of members of the ecclesiarchy. So they're actual clergymen
except for
and
two
women.
of them.
Who?
There's the cherub.
That's
He's
a baby priest, you're fine.
baby priest, and the death cult assassin. Not really part of the church.
That would just be a janitor, but instead of cleaning up messes, he cleans up messes of people.
He's the cleaner.
He's the cleaner.
Why do we call him the cleaner? Everything. He uses bleach on everything.
Gets rid of blood.
Right. Yes.
So, well, okay. So I've obviously already smashed your idea that religious leaders shouldn't be leading military forces.
You haven't
That
at all.
scathing
but
Sebastian Thor comment. But the Frateris Militia were actually a genuine unit you could use in 40k. They were available to the Sisters of Battle armies as early as the 2nd edition. I still have some of those miniatures. There was like 4 of them, the metal ones, and one of them looked like a weird version of Harrison Ford. Not Harrison Ford, of Ash from The Evil Dead. He had the shirt
that's true.
opened.
Yeah.
He had the one arm up with the knife. He had the pistol in the other hand instead of the boomstick. They were just phenomenal miniatures. And Games Workshop, if you are listening, bring them back, please.
And do you know what was so great about them? And I think we might have even mentioned this on the podcast before. They just look like citizens that have
they
grabbed
were
a pistol.
straight up citizens.
Yeah, and I guess the whole vibe and look and feel for a citizen these days is a lot of it's built around the Gene Stealer cult kit. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of like, oh well, that's what they should look like, that rigid sort of armor, and you know they look a little bit too heavily armored. Where these old Frateris militia models, it was a shirt and a pair of pants. That's all it was.
Yep.
It was just like they'd gone out that morning, got rolled up by the preacher, went home, got the pistol from underneath the bed, and said, "I'm going to war, honey. I'll see you if I see you." So yeah, they just look. They just genuinely. I think if they ever made them, as you were saying, if they had them as a rabble, they would just look so fantastic. And they don't need to have like spikes and piercings and all that. They just need to look like citizens who have been motivated.
Yeah, just regular people who've been whipped into a frenzy and who are going at it, defending their planet and their imperium from the enemy within, without, and beyond. Now, in battle, the Frateris Militia are barely organised and operate in huge mobs consisting of any number of brethren. Members of the Frateris Militia are not professional soldiers and receive no training to carry out their role. However, their faith is strong, and they often go on to perform great and terrible deeds in the name of the Master of Mankind. Mobs vary from ordinary citizens incensed against heretics or xenos by confessors, to those truly faithful individuals who pursue zealous self-sacrifice, to the already fanatical members of extreme imperial religious sects. Such is the Brethren's devotion and willingness to self-sacrifice, that the more dangerous and desperate the fighting, the more likely they will fight to the death. This is no different, in my opinion, to an army such as the Death Course of Krieg. This is no different to the Adeptus Astartes, where they are willing to sacrifice everything to complete their mission, that they are willing to lay down their lives and the lives of others for the betterment of the Imperium above all else. Now, I understand that a lot of the negative mindset towards these forces comes from the fact that they are not trained. And it specifically says they do not receive training to carry out their role. The militias, but you did mention it earlier, they may have groups within their militias or within their sort of cells who are able to teach certain skills, maintaining weapons. They may be able to transfer real life skills into the act of war. The comment I made earlier about you have a big hammer at work, you can swing it at a rock, you can swing it at a heretic.
Yep, definitely.
But a great example of this is in the was it Necropolis, the Gaunt's Ghost book, the Vervenhive Scratch militia companies, where they were regular civilians coming together. They may be
Yes.
rated PDF storage units, or there were members of the PDF or Imperial Guard within these Scratch companies, and
Yep.
they were teaching their skills to everyone else. It's no different there. And if you haven't read Gaunt's Ghost, please read Gaunt's Ghost. It's just
Yes,
a
go do
roller
it.
coaster.
You will
But
love it. Do you know when you describe that, I get immediately think partisan type of thing.
yep,
You might have a soldier who has managed to group up with some civilians and just being like, well, we need to continue fighting here.
yep,
The orcs have taken this area, but that doesn't mean that we're dead. We fight until we die. And so I'm going to teach you how to shoot. I'm going to teach you how to set up a frag mine or whatever the case might be. And I push you along in those ways. But the Frateris Militia, it's more like, okay, well, I'm going to teach you how to shoot, and the stabby stab bit, and the rest of the combat stuff you'll learn on the go. We're not, we're more an open army, more a traditional sense of the way that they fight. They're not creeping in from the shadows, killing X, Y, and Z, and retreating back. This is like meet the enemy, eyeball to eyeball, kill as many as you can before you're killed. So in saying that, the notion of the Frateris Militia is that you don't necessarily need to have them super well trained, but being able to know how to shoot so that they become more effective, so they can actually kill somebody with their shooting, is obviously a major facet of maintaining this force. But again, harping back to my point time and time again, it shouldn't be the ecclesiarchy teaching them this. It should be citizen soldiers. It should be veterans. It could be the local arbos saying, "Okay, we agree with you. Let's go stomp some face, because our faith in the emperor is as strong as yours. So we're going to teach you how to fire all these stub pistols. They're useless, but we're going to teach you how to do it." And we mass together and we go forward. And if you take a planet like, say, Necromunda, you don't need much education in that. You just need to find the people with the right mindset and the right attitude and the willingness to do the above and beyond what you're talking about because of their belief system. And this is where we talk about the training and the shooting and all that kind of stuff, and all these things that required and taught skills. They are non-comparable with Space Marines, non-comparable with Death Corps of Krieg. But the mental side of it, the mindset, is very much on the same sphere. Where a Space Marine says, "I shall know no fear," the Zealot may know fear, but bypasses it because of their belief system, because of what motivates them and drives them forward to be charging into the teeth of the enemy. So they may sense that fear, but they have this mentality of, well, my body is a vessel for the Emperor, and if it needs to be skewered on the end of some sort of poisonous round from a Dark Elder, or shredded by some Tyranid bioweapon, so be it, because then my body being destroyed will mean that somebody else will survive, who may get closer, who may destroy whatever enemy that we are fighting. So the mental side of it, the mindset, I think, is on the same comparable level as the devotion of a Space Marine, the devotion of a Death Corps of Krieg, the devotion of a member of House Caudal, House Co-Iron, all on the same level.
So, do you see the Frateris Militia as being different from the forces of the Red Redemption of House Cawdor?
That's a good question.
Before you answer, Do you see the forces of the Frateris Militia being any different to the crusader gangs of the Vaults of Temenos books? Before you answer, do you see the forces of the Frateris Militia, individuals, groups, or armies led by the ecclesiarchy, all right, the Frateris Militia,
Yeah.
do you see them as anything but a less professional version of the Adeptus Sororitas?
Yeah,
The
definitely.
forces
Yeah.
of the Ordos
Yeah.
Hereticus.
Definitely not on the same sphere as the Adeptus Sororitas, because
Warriors of faith led by the ecclesiarchy.
that's a big broad brush, right? Warriors of
It
faith, right?
is.
But the way that a Space Marine, covets their training, the way that they take care of their equipment, their mentality about warfare, and they understand their service to the Emperor is the complete and utter destruction of the Emperor, the Emperor, complete and utter destruction of the enemies of the Emperor. The way the Adeptus Sororitas is, their belief system is so ingrained and so like melded into who and what they are that it totals their entire life, whereas these amped up, revved up militia are, I think it's more of like flicking a switch, whereas for the Adeptus Sororitas it's more about an entire form of existence. So yes, definitely different to them. In terms of the Crusade gangs, mate, to be honest with you, they are not much different. It's just we're talking about scale. The Crusade gang is a handful, 20, 30, whatever the case might be. The Frateris Militia, we're talking about a force equivalent to an army that has been motivated to go forward. And I said that we see that in the Aranthian succession. So at the core level of it, no, they are effectively the same. They are still riled up believers who are ready to absolutely destroy whatever they come in contact with. And this sort of brings me back to the Sororitas as well, because once they've destroyed it, or once they've defended against it, or once they've done whatever they believe their mission as by the Emperor is, this Frateris Militia, or these riled up in religious fanatics, what becomes of them? They perhaps dwindle back into society, or they become even more militant and begin hunting for and looking for the next thing that they can go after, whether that thing be innocent or chaotic or whatever the case might be. It doesn't matter, it pushes them on. Whereas I think once the Sisters of Battle have fought, once the Adeptus Sororitas have done their task, they go back into their way of practicing their religious, I guess, beliefs and practicing their rituals. So that is where I see the difference between them and the riling mob. That's a good answer.
That's a really good answer. So you're saying the difference between sort of acceptable and unacceptable when it comes to religiously focused military forces is professionalism of their military side versus their religious side.
No, that's not what I said at all. What I was saying was the Sisters of Battle, their religious fanaticism is a practiced and keen thing that they do. It is not simply flicking a switch and suddenly they become crazies.
But the Frateris Militias, the Frateris Templars, they were full-time focusing on the religion and the combat.
We're not talking about the Templars. We're talking about Frateris Militia.
But
Frateris Templar might have been something very different. Might be probably more akin to what the Sisters of Battle are, the modern-day Sisters of Battle are. The Frateris Militia are not. And they are being... And this is, again, reiterating my point about the ecclesiarchy. The ecclesiarchy know the right buttons to switch. The right buttons to push and the right switches to flick to motivate this mob and this horde into what they want. And that is where the danger lies, because I've said it before, I don't necessarily believe that the ecclesiarchy sit there and do everything for the good and the right of the Imperium. I do, however, believe that the Astromets, Harum and Imperial Navy do, though, but that's because I'm biased. So,
Okay.
yeah, but, yes, so I think the really important factor here is about understanding that Joe Blow sitting in his home reading his prayer book and becomes so devoted and so motivated that he wants to go destroy the closest Chaos cult. I think it's the same mindset as that Death Corps of Krieg member who goes, yes, I go over the trench and I die. Why do I die? Because I die for the Emperor. Done. I think it's the same mentality. I think that needs to be well established, that there's not much difference in their mentality and their mindset of how and why they serve. You know, the Space Marine is ever so slightly different, because I think there's almost an onus on the Space Marine to survive, because of they are a much greater threat to the enemies of mankind alive than any form of sacrificial death they may have, because all those years, all those decades spent tuning that fighting machine, only for it to be snuffed out in some, pointless charge or something like that, just seems like a waste of something that could be utilised a lot better for the Imperium. But I will get on to our next read. Those who serve the ecclesiarchy are often drafted into the Frateris Militia to serve in times of need. While not formally trained or given a wage as members of a proper military would be, they are excused from other official duties during their service. Anyone with a strong loyalty to the ecclesiarchy could have served in a Frateris Militia, and an inquisitor or cardinal values those who bring experience at arms to the cell of an inquisitorial acolytes in the field. So, I guess what we're saying here is now we're starting to move away from the large masses, and we're starting to, what I mentioned earlier about what is the aftermath for the Frateris Militia. What do they look like after the fact? And so now you're starting to say, well, inquisitors and cardinals and so forth look at these members and begin to value them to a higher degree, and say, wow, you've actually served in the Frateris Militia, so therefore you understand what it takes to be in a military environment while still being able to maintain that dedication and faith that is desired.
I also think it shows that inquisitors and sort of like higher ranking members of the ecclesiarchy who maybe need a slightly more militant aspect to sort of their retinues and the like, but also with religious fervour. Inquisitors would be looking at members of the sort of the Frateris Militias and saying, I want you with me, not just because you are faithful and you are an individual of faith, but I know you are combat driven. I know you have skills beyond just reading from a book and, quoting scripture. I know that when push comes to shove, you're going to stab someone repeatedly while humming a sermon. Like, it's going to be, I'm going to be able to throw you into the meat grinder of war, and you'll be driven on not just by your desire to live, but your faith and your willingness to fight for the Emperor, and fight possibly to your death in service of something greater than yourself. And these individuals would not be possible without the Frateris Militias, without the ecclesiarchs, without the confessors, without all of these individuals within the church pushing them into this position that was made illegal by Sebastian Thor, by the decree passive. So these individuals, these men at arms, these members of the flock, Nathan with his hammer, who was saying, you can hit a rock, you can hit a heretic. You are now possibly a drill abbot, Like you've elevated yourself through the actions that have possibly been deemed illegal by a guy dead thousands of years ago. Whereas, why is serving the emperor against the law, Nathan? That's why they are valued by the Inquisition. That is why they are valued by the ecclesiarchy. And I actually have a further point to this, but I'm not going to bring it up till the end. But this is the point I'm trying to make. You don't like them because, they go against this law. Yet we know this law was created to take power away from the emperor's rightful successors, the ecclesiarchy. It was taken away to be given back to the Imperial Army and the Imperial Navy, who had begun to fail the Imperium. They had begun to fail. They had wavered in their mission, and it came down to the ecclesiarchy stepping in and forming their own military groups in an attempt to save the Imperium, not just from the enemy within, but the enemy without and the enemy beyond.
Right. Okay. So you're woefully wrong. The military power does not belong to the religious arm. It belongs to the military arm of the Imperium. That they are very lucky to have the Sisters of Battle at their beck and call, and that needs to be fully understood. That they I don't even believe they should have as close a tie with the Sisters of Battle. I'm totally for the Adeptus Sororitas. Go for it. Lead every charge. Be crazy religious nutter girls. Go for it. Absolutely love it. Can't get enough of the stuff. But the attachment of the ecclesiarchy is what I find disturbing, because, as I've said many times before, the ecclesiarchy I don't believe are full of the good-natured and correct and righteous souls that you want us to believe. These are groups of individuals, or more than that, councils, who would look to corrupt and usurp the correct and true governors of planets and worlds and of military forces, all for their own ends. So, to say that they protected and defended the Imperium when the Imperial Army and the Imperial Navy could not, I don't quite believe that. They may have. But once they have done that, and once the Imperial Navy and once the Imperial Army are at a state where they can regain control, then they need to have given up that control of their military and filter it all back into the proper channels, into the proper lines, because they are too dangerous with it. Just like any force that existed after the Imperium was designed to be weakened so it could not do what Horus did, then you cannot have the ecclesiarchy with that much control, that much power, and more importantly, that much resource. That needs to be stripped away from them. They should not have the resources that you're talking about.
Okay. So while often reviled as a useless and disorganized pitchfork-wielding mob by professional Imperial soldiers and foolish podcast hosts, the Frateris Militia have proven their worth time and time again in low-level conflicts throughout the galaxy. Veterans of the Frateris Militia often identify strongly with one another as comrades in arms, just as in any other military unit. On many shrine worlds, organizations of ex-militia can grow very politically powerful, as the tight-knit nature of the group assures mutual support. It is true that the Frateris Militia are by no means professional soldiers, yet on many worlds they are in effect the dominant military power, and high-ranking clerics repeatedly turn to them to prop up their theocratic regimes. So, this one here brings up some really, really good points.
You're damn right it does. You're damn right it does. And I will say it for you before you embarrass yourself. Yet on many worlds, they are in effect the dominant military power, and high-ranking clerics members of the ecclesiarchy repeatedly turned to them to prop up their theocratic regimes. Just for the audience and for my sake, can you just explain to me what that particular high-ranking cleric is doing?
I'm just going to say that they would obviously be propping up the theocratic regimes against heretics and against
Liar, cad,
the enemy
anti-dog,
within and
filth
without
of a man,
and beyond. They would
right?
be propping up these bulwarks of imperial faith against the onrushing tides of heresy, of Xenos, of everything trying to drag down the Imperium bit by bit. That's who the Frateris Militia are propping up.
So they're propping up for things that are trying to drag down the Imperium. So they're propping it up against themselves. Is that what you're saying? Because they drag it down. Where is the administratum here? Where is the rightful governor? Where is the presence of the Astra Militarum? Where is the presence of the Imperial
How do
Navy?
we know that the Frateris Militia aren't propping up against a corrupt governor? Maybe the Astra Militarum has already been drafted to fight somewhere else in another crusade, and that all that's left are the PDF and the civilians of this planet to defend their homeland against Xenos invaders.
A heretic. You are a heretic. Right? And right now, folks, what you're hearing is how it would unfold on a planet where the administratum wanted to take control away from the ecclesiarchy. They would find a way of declaring you a heretic, and they would by saying, how dare you accuse one of our governors, one of our gracious and glorious, wholly appointed governors of being anything other than righteous and correct. How dare you, sir? So now we must come to you with the full might of the administratum, and that means all things clerical, accounting based. You are in trouble. You will never ever be able to meet your tithe ever again, and henceforth your theocratic regime will crumble and be replaced with a proper imperial governor. Oh, you don't like that? Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to mobilise your tight-knit groups of ex-militia? Is that what you're going to do?
But could you not also see these groups of former militiamen coming together as almost a final barrier against an invading force? What's to say that it's not these militia members coming together and whipping their fellow citizens into a fury to expel invaders, to rise up against a greenskin war, or side with the Imperium against a Genestealer cult uprising? How can we say that it's not these groups coming together, led by those with experience? Because, and yes, I get where you're coming from. The majority of the military leadership should be coming from the Astra Militarum. I'm there with you. I totally agree. But of every regiment that leaves a planet, how many come home?
I totally understand that, and I agree with you. Yes, once the sons and daughters of the planet have been sent off world, their good is gone. They very rarely ever return home. But what I'm saying to you is that in this particular read, that the clerics repeatedly turn to them to prop up their theocratic regimes.
Absolutely, because we know the Imperium is based on a theory of it's effectively multiple feudal empires. It doesn't matter how you rule your planet, as long as you meet the requirements of love me Emperor, love me tithes, love me Imperial Guard. Like that's you have to provide your tithe of faith. You have to provide your tithe of either bodies or gear. Like
Yep.
And it doesn't matter
Yep.
how you do it. And one of the simplest ways within the Imperium that we know of maintaining stability on your planet is with a strong basis of faith.
You do not need to preach to me about that. I'm all about faith. But what I'm saying is the ecclesiarchy will manipulate and use that faith to maintain their power. Where their power, they should be, as in the High Lords of Terror, advising to a true representative of the Imperium. They should not be the governing, ruling, or power basis on a planet. They should be advising to that. And that is their only role. I totally agree with you that on the Shrine Worlds, time and time again, probably these groups of militia, these groups of ex-Frateris Militia would have been the main fighting force, right? And in that particular circumstance, whilst on a Shrine World, they are led by the ecclesiarchy in defence of their home, in the persecution of a cult. By all means, go for your life. As soon as that happens, though, they are disbanded. They go to ground. And I know it's a Shrine World, which makes it a little bit different. The overall governing control and power is kept with a non-ecclesiarchical representative. They may, and this we blur the lines, they may be incredibly religious, but they don't hold the title of bishop, deacon, frickin' rook, knight, whatever you want to call them, right? They are the governor. They are the Lord High Marshal. They are even a Lord Commissar, whatever they might be, as the highest ruling body on that planet. They can be as religious as they want, but on paper, they need to be non-representative of the ecclesiarchy. So that's, and again, Shrine World's different. Do you know what I mean? Shrine World.
That's the thing. On a Shrine World, I can't help but think that the Frateris Militias would be your first line of defense because they are a part of the civilian population. And as soon as they start seeing something just a little bit ooky spooky, something that they don't like, they would be the ones investigating it. They would be the ones reporting it back to their deacons or their chaplains or their confessors or whatever, and that would make its way up the ranks to the individuals, for example, within the Inquisition, to get back there.
Yes, yeah, on a Shrine World. But again, I still think the power should lie with a non-ecclesiarchical representative. So even if it does lie with the Inquisitor, but I imagine any close ties to a Shrine World would mean that they would have probably quite a devout mindset when it came to the Imperial Creed. So again, it's a very, very, very grey area. If we were to eliminate this from a Shrine World and you were to say that there are high-ranking clerics on a standard Manufactorum world who were propping up their position within their theocratic ideals or morals, then you could see how that would be really wrong, how that would be going against the nature of the Imperium. You can see my point of view here.
I understand where you're coming from there. I personally disagree with the overarching message, but I understand where you're coming from.
And where I'm coming from is a place of righteousness and good against your religious silliness.
So, jump onto that last reading point, because there are a couple of things I want to bring up.
The Inquisition has a mixed view of the Frateris Militia. On one hand, individual inquisitors often frequently recruit acolytes from the ranks of those few survivors of heroically doomed wars of faith. Yet on the other hand, the Inquisition as a whole, and in particular the Ordo Hereticus, is mindful of the historical precedent of the Age of Apostasy, when the military forces of the Adeptus Militarum grew too powerful and threatened the stability of the Imperium. Thank you. As such, the Ordo Hereticus acts to ensure that any rising of Frateris Militia is only a temporary event, and as such forces are disbanded after they are no longer needed. Is exactly my point. I should be an Inquisitor. Exactly my point. You rise up, do your business, and boot off.
And I have no problem with these groups being temporary sort of
Also,
gatherings.
you're not led by anybody from the ecclesiarchy. You can be led in groups of tens, twenties, thousands, tens of thousands, but the commander of your forces, you're not the head of an army group. The head of the army group is Astra Militarum, is Adeptus Arbites, is sorry, not Adeptus Arbites, Adeptus Astartes, or Sororitas, or something along those lines. It is not a member of the ecclesiarchy. They will not lead an army group. They can advise to it. That is all. My ruling. Done.
Okay. Well, so in 4th edition, the Frateris Militia models were actually designated as zealots for the witch hunters' armies of the Inquisition's Ordos Hereticus. So, I want to talk about warriors of faith. I want to talk about warriors of faith from within other groups. Do you know much about the Schola Progenium?
I know enough.
So, Progenium, not Progenum. Do you know who the main teachers are at Schola Progenium?
I do not know that. Tell me that.
They're called drill abbots. Drill abbots are decorated veterans of the Imperium's wars who tirelessly work at converting the orphans of martyred Imperial servants into driven and dedicated fanatics prepared for the trials of Imperial life. Now, the drill abbots are technically full preachers of the ecclesiarchy, but they are excused from a preacher's normal duties of ministering to the faithful in favour of a more specialised role in teaching the future leaders and special forces of the Imperium. Drill leaders have actually come from a wide variety of backgrounds, but most have served at least half their lives in one branch or another of the Imperial military. Alright?
Yep,
They
I'm
then
following.
move into Schola Progenium and become teachers. So they are preachers. They are members of the ecclesiarchy who have experience with the military arms of the Imperium, who by your logic should not be allowed to exist.
They shouldn't be allowed to lead. No.
So
they can teach.
They shouldn't be teaching. They shouldn't be forming.
They can teach. That's fine.
They can teach. They can't lead.
They can't lead.
Okay. So then,
But
should
also,
religious warriors exist
so
at a
also,
full-time level?
No, absolutely not. No. So this is not a military group. They could be organised. These drill abbots could be organised, right, into a military group. No, sorry. Yes, they should be allowed to exist because you have the Sisters of Battle. So yes, they should be allowed to.
But are they not led by effectively members of the ecclesiarchy?
No, they're not. They're led by other Sisters of Battle.
Who serve the ecclesiarchy.
But they're not members of the ecclesiarchy. Their machinations, their objective and their end goals is nothing political. It is about destroying heretics. It is about ensuring the sanctity of the Imperium. And I'm sure if they were mobilised to take down, say if what do they call their houses? Convent? Not a convent. What do they call them?
Convent.
Convent? Okay, let's just call it that. We're happily to be corrected on that one. But if they were to mobilise an entire convent to displace or destabilise a governor, they would say no in the face of the ecclesiarchy, whereas the frenzied masses would say, absolutely, Mr. Pointy Hat. Where else do we need to burn down? So that is the difference. The sororitas would say, no, we're not destabilising this government for you. There's no way. There's no two ways about it. You see this planet as a means to get more power for not only yourself but the ecclesiarchy, but it is the wrong thing to be doing. So We won't do that. We will push against you because we understand our role as devoted daughters of the Emperor, who fundamentally are a fighting element of one of the many fighting elements of the Imperium.
What about crusaders?
Individual crusaders,
Yeah.
not as dangerous. I know
They
you're
are,
talking
they are
about.
religious warriors. And obviously, yeah, the big thing is they serve as members of an Inquisitor's retinue, for example.
Yep.
So
Yep.
individually, you're saying they're fine.
Of course they're fine. Of course they're
Okay.
fine because they're not mobilised into vast armies that could destabilise a planet.
Okay. But they could split off and lead groups of
No, you
rebels.
see, okay, Mister, I shall not be killed by no man, sort of thing. You're arguing semantics here.
Yeah, I swear that was Deathly Hallows. It was right after
It
Snape,
wasn't. No,
wasn't it?
you're a fool. You're a fool. You're a fool.
Okay,
You're
so
full of a talk.
something a lot of people don't realize is those crusaders actually typically come from something called a crusader house. Now, they are warrior orders. They are effectively temples of training. But they traditionally crusaders come from the Schola Progenium, but they can come from also these crusader houses. Now, little known to anyone outside of the Inquisition, the crusader houses. Crusaders are warriors of utmost dedication and potency, sworn to serve the agents of the Inquisition with no regard for their own desires whatsoever. All right? Now, they are warrior monks, heavily armed, who, with these crusader houses, can be deployed in massive numbers.
What's defined massive numbers? For when they are normally deployed in ones or twos, a massive number from one or two could be 1,000, could be 10,000. That does not make a dent on a normal world. And plus, they're under the control of the Inquisition.
So, if they're under control of someone from the Ordos Hereticus, who have strong ties to the ecclesiarchy,
You said it yourself, strong ties. They're not ecclesiarchy. And
yet they
I
are
mentioned
witch hunters. They are fanatical devotees of the cult of the Imperium.
And their end goal, their end objective, is to protect the cult of the creed of the Emperor, right? The Imperial creed, sorry.
Much like the Frateris Militias.
No. You let me finish. They are not taking into account the political machinations, the political aspirations of a member of the ecclesiarchy. They are hunting down heretics, and I can guarantee you, in a force of Ordo Hereticus, you would not have even 1% of them going, "Oh, how are we going to use this for our long-term benefit?" They would be wiping out whatever cult they were hunting, whatever heretic they were hunting, and then they would either be looking for the next target or disbanding. They wouldn't be maintained, they wouldn't be kept organised, and they wouldn't be driven by the notions of grandeur and power that I believe a lot of members of the ecclesiarchy would be doing. Very much like the Thane of House Cawdor. He sees himself as potentially moving up the pile of rubbish, further up into the noble houses, for power and control. That is one member on one planet without the grand, overreaching and overarching support of the ecclesiarchy. Now imagine if a member of the ecclesiarchy thought that they could motivate and push their members to change their particular station within a planet. There would be so much power behind that, because it's almost, we go refer back to the unions, touch one, touch all. Touch one member of the ecclesiarchy on planet X200 nobody cares about, and planet ABC over in a completely different sector hears about it, they're going to start mobilising against you because you have hurt and damaged a member of the imperial cult. And they're pushing themselves for the right reason You cannot attack the Imperial cult, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go, kick some teeth in, do whatever we need to do. We don't know how we're going to get there because the Imperial Navy doesn't talk to us. But the person who has been attacked might have very much had political notions about where they want to be, how they can destabilise the government so that they can become more powerful. Now, I haven't mentioned it, but I will mention this tiny little nugget. When you are that religious, right, you are that full on, and you're that bombastic, and you're that in that much control of such a large flock, your belief system is already there, correct? So strong within yourself. All it takes is a little sprinkling of the naughty gnome good magic from the warp, and suddenly your belief system changes and warps into something else. But we're not going to go into that because that's corruption, and that is not about the Frateris Militia. But it does not take much for that particular individual or member to be corrupted and then to turn their vision into something that is more anti-Imperium than it is pro-Imperium.
Okay. So,
You're wrong.
the Sisters of Silence, the psychic gnolls tasked with controlling the black ships,
Yeah.
they were disbanded after the Age of Apostasy. They're
Righto.
still around. They number in the tens of thousands, and I understand they're not. That's not a lot. That's not a lot when it comes to armies. But do you believe an army of tens of thousands of Sisters of Silence could cause something negative on a planet? Cause something negative in a sector? Do you believe that if they felt that they were doing the right thing, directing psychers away from the Emperor?
So, is this episode about the Sisters of
No,
Silence
I'm
or about the
saying
Frateris Militia?
their faith in the Emperor and their mission and what they are drives them to do what they do. All right, they were officially disbanded after the Age of Apostasy, and they've only come back since Guilliman has come back as the Lord Commander of the Imperium. He has basically said, so they were disbanded, they disappeared, but enclaves of them continued to operate for, we don't know, anywhere between 5 and 10,000 years. We actually don't know what year it is.
Yep.
But they've continued to operate. And now, what made them illegal, their disbandment after the Age of Apostasy, that law hasn't been changed. But still, they exist. And
So Guilliman's
they've been
come
allowed
back.
to exist once again.
And Guilliman's come back and ratified them and said they're okay to exist.
He hasn't. No, they're just back.
Okay. So they shouldn't exist.
They shouldn't. So you're saying we should just get rid of them?
Yeah, they shouldn't.
Then
they
who
shouldn't
operates the black ships, Nathan? Who operates the black ships?
That's classified.
That was good. I'm clutching at straws a little bit here. You've made some excellent arguments.
I expect to be absolutely destroyed by people. That is a lot of my existence now with this podcast. Just I say stuff and I'm just like, that's an email.
Yeah.
That's a message. And then I'll say something and be like, that's going to be a long message. That one's going to be particularly packed full of venom for the things that I've said. But I'm happy that I'm engaging with these people, even if it means destroying my confidence. No, look, I've really enjoyed this chat about the
Guilliman
Frateris
actually
Militia.
did reinstate them. He amended the law.
Okay, so they're okay. Plus, to counteract your point, they wouldn't be able to mobilise and organise themselves in great enough numbers to have any meaningful impact. So, I've really enjoyed this chat about the Frateris Militia. I think if you do see me and you want to talk to me about it, I'm always willing to talk about this topic. This and the First War of Armageddon really just... They get right at my hackles, these ones, and I just get really fired up about it. So, great topic that you picked. Great.
Yeah,
Really,
thank you for that one, Dan. But
yeah.
so on top of this all, how would you bring this into the tabletop? Would you do it in the form of a gang or an army, do you think?
Oh, look, the gang's there already. If you're talking about creating the Frateris Militia, you already said it yourself. It's anything from Cawdor or the Redemption. Just go hell for leather. You know, you've got it already there. The rules are basically there for you. In terms of the army, I keep referencing this book because I'm not afraid to say I'm obsessed with it. The Agents of the Imperium book. Sorry, correction. I keep referencing this book. The Imperial Agents, not Agents of the Imperium.
Agents of the Imperium. Yeah, I swear
Imperial
it was
Agents.
Agents of the Imperium, sorry.
Yeah, so did I, but it is Imperial Agents, and you can take preachers in there or Minotaurum priests. You can take Minotaurum priests, you can take the Sanctifiers now, you can take Sisters of Battle in there, you can take, I think, Immolators, and there is one other thing they can take. You can take a lot of religious nutter units in that army. So they're really awesome. That's the way you could run an ecclesiarchal army, because you have not just the elements of the Sister of Battle, you have other different elements, sanctifiers. You have you could use your Arbites and make them particularly religious. Police officers, or even the Navy breaches.
Your Sanctifiers, they have a data sheet for
They
use
do.
in 40k.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah. So, and they're really good. They're only like 100 points, and they got flamers coming out the wazoo. So, if I was to go down an army pathway, it would definitely be Imperial Agents. I know it's the obvious choice, but I think the Imperial Creed is so particular that I think it's very hard to sort of proxy it into a different army. You can't just simply go, well, here's my guard army, and they have religious beliefs and tendencies. How you manifest that with the rules, I think, is very difficult. In terms of aesthetics and the miniatures, yes, of course you can do that. You can have lots of crazy religious nutters in the army and across it, and it'll look really great. But I don't think the army itself would have that vibe and that feel of playing like a heavily belief-stricken army. This would be, an Imperial Guard army that just looks like religious nutters. Whereas I think the Imperial Agents books really gives you the opportunity to take them as they are. I'd like to see it a bit more. Like it gives you a little bit of everything. And then obviously the other end of the spectrum is the Sisters of Battle, which are just, proper, manifestations of belief. We see that, they can actually change and have effect on the battlefield just through their belief system. So, yeah, I think House Cawdor is your perfect way to go, and especially the Crusade gangs from Volta Temenos.
Yeah.
And yeah, anything to do with the Redemption could easily be. You could easily take any part of what we've talked about and make that happen with either any one of those gang options.
I got to disagree with you on one thing. I don't see Frateris Militia as Cawdor. I know it sounds dumb. I don't see them as Cawdor.
Really?
I would see them more as a crusade gang. I would see them as a group of not necessarily your common religious crazies being whipped up into a frenzy. I'd love to see crusading Orlocks, or Goliath, who have evolved, who a preacher has joined them and has beat this almost like proto faith into them. And
Oh, right.
so
Yeah, I like that.
they're sort of we it's like a fire cult. We kill heretics and we take them back to the forges and we burn them, and we make the weapons of the faith from their bones.
Oh, that's really
they've
cool.
Really
Yeah.
twisted the imperial faith in that respect. Your idea of the Imperial Agents or Agents of the Imperium or Inquisition plus whatever that codex is called. I love that idea. I love the idea of building it around the kill teams and sort of then this mismatch of these different groups pulled together under this confessor. If I did it as a guard army, I would just you'd model them all with autoguns as opposed to las guns, or you'd you'd do a lot of sort of close combat conversions. You'd have them, you'd rush them. You'd charge everyone in close combat and be like, yeah, I'm going to charge these 30 guardsmen into that squad of corn berserkers. You're probably going to win, but you know what? You are going to have to spend so long cleaning your chain axe later on. You're going to be pissed the whole time. But you'd love to see something like that. I'd love to see, if it's Necromunda, it's got to be whatever gang it is. You're putting them. You're going the real reclaimed aspect. You're going real scum. You got to make them look like real scum. And that's how I'd do it.
Excuse the word scum, but it's more like make them look like citizens. Make them look like they have had enough of doing whatever they're doing, and now they've decided they're going to be religious. And it may only be for a week, it may be for 10 years, but it has a beginning and an end. Do you know what I mean? So at some stage they need to come back to their civilian life. So,
perfect.
Yeah. No, I like it. I love the idea with the Goliaths making their weapons out of bones of the heretics. That's cool. I really love that. It's an awesome idea.
Yeah. So, all right. That is our episode. I think we can both, firstly, thank you, Dan, for asking Nathan and I to argue with each other for an episode.
That's pretty much what happened.
Was great. This was supposed to be a quick episode. I think it's still like 2 hours.
Well,
this has
that
been
is
fun.
somewhat quick. Yeah, no,
This
it has been really
fun.
enjoyable. Yeah.
If you all are still listening to this, that's great. Hopefully you found it fun as well. And yeah, if you are interested in doing something like this, reach out to us. Get onto our Patreon. Remember, as a Character Club member, no matter how, what did I say? Fish-headed or imperial-fisted, boo. Or whatever it is, join up at that tier there, and you do get an episode of whatever you want. And to our existing Character Club members, I've messaged a bunch of you saying, hey, give me some episodes. We will be looking at doing some more stuff like this. And Nathan, any closing thoughts there, bud? Love me.
Don't ask me that question.
You going to start a Frateris Militia army?
No. I'm going to tell you how wrong you are and how wrong you've been.
Well, in that case, from this one here, I actually do have a quote to take us out on. And I really think you're going to enjoy this because it shows in my opinion, just base humanity that comes from the faith that we can get from the Frateris Militia. No. By the throne boy. How many times? Depress the loading catch before removing the drum feed, not while removing the drum feed. You'll jam the weapon. Oh, stop bawling, child. You're 10 years old. You should have learned basic autogun procedures by now. 50 press-ups and 50 Pax Imperiums. And certainly there will be no dinner. And that is Drill Abbott Cross Vogt. And that was our latest episode of the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast. I am Spamiel, and on behalf of the Lorekeeper team, thank you for listening. Please follow us on our social media pages available in the show notes, and don't forget to follow and review us on your preferred podcast platform. As always, if you have questions, complaints, corrections, or if you too wish to join the noble and righteous cause of the Frateris Militias and save the Imperium from within, from without, and from beyond, please reach out to us at underhivelorekeepers@gmail.com. Thanks.